We're continuing with our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, text number 41. That's where we'll start up. I'd like to express our deepest respects, obeisances, and gratitude to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for giving us all of these opportunities. O spotless one, your answers to all these questions will grant immunity from all material miseries. Such charity is greater than all Vedic charities, sacrifices, penances, etc. Text 42. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, thus the chief of the sages, who was always enthusiastic about describing topics regarding the personality of Godhead, began to narrate the descriptive explanation of the Puranas, being so infused by Vidura. He was very much enlivened by speaking on the transcendental activities of the Lord. Purport: great learned sages like Maitreya Muni are always very enthusiastic about describing the transcendental activities of the Lord. Maitreya Muni, being thus invited by Vidura to speak, appeared to be smiling because he actually felt transcendental bliss. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Further Inquiries by Vidura.
Haribo!
Bravo! Sadhu, sadhu. Chapter 8. Manifestation of Brahmā from Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. Purport: the great sage Maitreya thanked Vidura and praised him by reference to his family glories. The Puru dynasty was full of devotees of the personality of Godhead and was therefore glorious. Because they were not attached to impersonal Brahman or to the localized Paramatma, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, they were worthy to render service to the Lord and his pure devotees. Because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally he engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura. He considered the company of Vidura most desirable because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional service. Text 2. Let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavat Purana, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the personality of Godhead for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries for the sake of very little pleasure. Purport: the sage Maitreya proposed to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam because it was especially compiled and traditionally comes down in the disciplic succession for the solution of all problems of human society. Only one who is fortunate can have the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees of the Lord. Under the spell of material energy, the living entities are entrapped in the bondage of many difficulties simply for the sake of a little bit of material happiness. They engage in fruitive activities not knowing the implications. Under the false impression that the body is the self, the living entities foolishly relate to so many false attachments. They think that they can engage with the materialistic paraphernalia forever. This gross misconception of life is so strong that a person suffers continually, life after life, under the external energy of the Lord. If one comes in contact with the book Bhagavatam, as well as with the devotee Bhagavata, who knows what the Bhagavatam is, then such a fortunate man gets out of the material entanglement. Therefore, Sri Maitreya Muni out of compassion for the suffering men in the world, proposes to speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam first and last. What level is that fan going at? Is it top or middle or just asking?
It's lower than it's not the top.
What number is it at?
It is at 4, I guess.
Now or before?
No, not this.
Huh?
It is not exactly the thing is not very good, it seems.
Called Chakadola.
Numbers are not very good, like.
I think it's on.
All right, well, just don't put it up full, but it's like being in a helicopter with that.
So 1. So this is 4 now. This is the maximum.
Try 2. Is that 2?
That is 1 less than the maximum.
Go to 2 then, 1 down.
One more down.
We'll apply calculus. That's good, I think. Not enough? Go 1 up.
It's good.
Really? Okay. Where are we?
Verse 3.
Thank you. Verse number 3. Some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumara, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by other great sages, inquired exactly like you about the truths regarding Vasudeva, the Supreme, from Lord Sankarsana, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. Purport. This is in clarification of the statement that the Lord spoke directly on the Srimad Bhagavatam. When and unto whom the Bhagavatam was spoken is explained herewith. Questions similar to those put forward by Vidura were asked by great sages like Sanat Kumara and Lord Sankarsana. The plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva answered them. At that time, Lord Sankarsana was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, whom the learned esteem as Lord Vasudeva. But for the sake of the advancement of the great learned sages, he slightly opened his lotus-like eyes and began to speak. The sages came from the highest planets down to the lower region through the water of the Ganges, and therefore the hair on their heads was wet. They touched the lotus feet of the Lord, which are worshipped with various paraphernalia by the daughters of the Serpent King when they desire good husbands. Purport. The Ganges water flows directly from the lotus feet of Viṣṇu, and its course runs from the highest planet of the universe down to the lowest. The sages came down from Satyaloka by taking advantage of the flowing water, a process of transportation made possible by the power of mystic yoga. If a river flows thousands and thousands of miles, a perfect yogi can at once transport himself from one place to another simply by dipping in its water. The Ganges is the only celestial river which flows throughout the universe, and great sages travel all over the universe via this sacred river. The statement that their hair was wet indicates that it was directly moistened by the water originating from the lotus feet of Viṣṇu, the Ganges. Whoever touches the water of the Ganges to his head surely touches the lotus feet of the Lord directly and can become free from all effects of sinful acts. If after taking a bath in the Ganges or being washed of all sins, a man guards himself against committing further sinful acts, then certainly he is delivered. But if he again takes up sinful activities, his bath in the Ganges is as good as that of the elephant, who nicely takes his bath in a river, but later spoils the whole thing by covering himself with dust on the land. The 4 Kumaras, headed by Sanat Kumara, who all knew the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, glorified the Lord in the rhythmic accents with selected words full of affection and love. At that time, Lord Sankarsana, with his thousands of raised hoods, began to radiate an effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. Purport. The Lord is sometimes addressed as Uttama Shloka, which means one who is worshipped with selected words by devotees. Somebody talking out there? It's really... A profusion of such selected words comes from a devotee who is fully absorbed in affection and love for the devotional service of the Lord. There are many instances in which even a small boy who is a great devotee of the Lord could offer excellent prayers in the choicest words for glorification of the pastimes of the Lord. In other words, without the development of fine affection and love, one cannot offer prayers to the Lord very suitably. Lord Sankarsana thus spoke the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam to the great sage Sanat Kumara, who had already taken the vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumara also, in his turn, when inquired of by Sankhya Muni, explained Srimad Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Sankarsana. This is the way of the Parampara system. Although Sanat Kumara, the well-known great saintly Kumara, was in the perfect stage of life, still he heard the message of Srimad Bhagavatam from Lord Sankarsana. Similarly, when he was questioned by Sankhya Rishi, he spoke to him the same message he had heard from Lord Sankarsana. In other words, unless one hears from the proper authority, one cannot become a preacher. In devotional service, therefore, 2 items out of the 9, namely hearing and chanting, are most important. Without hearing nicely, one cannot preach the message of Vedic knowledge. The great sage Sankhya was the chief amongst the transcendentalists, and when he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam, it so happened that my spiritual master, Parashara, and Brihaspati both heard him. The great sage Parashara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulastya, spoke unto me the foremost of my Puranas, Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. The great sage of the name Pulastya is the father of all demoniac descendants. Once upon a time, Parashara began a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burnt to death because his father had been killed and devoured by one of them. The great sage Vaisesika Muni arrived at the sacrifice and requested Parashara to stop the deadly action. And because of Vaisesika's position and respect in the community of sages, Parashara could not deny the request. Parashara, having stopped the sacrifice, Pulastya, the father of the demons, appreciated his Brahminical temperament and gave the blessing that in the future he would be a great speaker on the Vedic literatures called the Puranas, the supplements of the Vedas. Parashara's action was appreciated by Pulastya because Parashara had forgiven the demons out of his Brahminical power of forgiveness. Parashara was able to demolish all the demons in the sacrifice, but he considered, demons are so made that they devour living creatures, men and animals, but why on that account should I withdraw my Brahminical qualification of forgiveness? As the great speaker of the Puranas, Parashara first of all spoke on the Srimad Bhagavata Purana, because it is the foremost of all the Puranas. Maitreya Muni desired to narrate the same Bhagavatam he had heard from Parashara, and Vidura was qualified to hear it because of his faithfulness and his following the instructions received from superiors. So Srimad Bhagavatam was being narrated from time immemorial by the disciplic succession, even before the time of Vyasadeva. The so-called historians calculate the Puranas to be only a few hundred years old, but factually the Puranas existed from time immemorial, before all historical calculations by the mundaners and speculative philosophers. At that time, when the 3 worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu was alone. lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta, and although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. The Lord is eternally enjoying... What's the verse from Prahlad? Half-closed eyes. Could you look it up, please? Half-closed eyes. The Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. In other words, the Lord is enjoying eternally his transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala. After the three worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems merged into the water of dissolution, the living entities of all the three worlds remained in their subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kala. In this dissolution, the gross bodies became unmanifest, but the subtle bodies existed just like the water of the material creation. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up, as is the case in the full dissolution of the material world. Jagad vilayam bhumanye sheshet manani dasukana bhavo niriha nirkena milita atma nipitin vidvas kama turyestito natutamo nagunamscha yunkshe. What number is it?
32.
That'll be our new motto about the half-closed eyes. He's lying there with half-closed eyes, the Lord. Who knows that? Go interview 1,000 people and see if they know. The Lord laid, thank you. The Lord lay down for 4,000 yuga cycles in his internal potency, and by his external energy, he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body as bluish. In the Viṣṇu Purana, Kala Shakti is mentioned as avidya. The symptom of the influence of the Kala Shakti is that one has to work in the material world for fruitive results. The fruitive workers are described in Bhagavad Gita as mudhas, or foolish. Such foolish living entities are very enthusiastic to work for some temporary benefit within perpetual bondage. One thinks himself very clever throughout his life if he is able to leave behind him a great asset of wealth for his children, and to achieve this temporary benefit he takes the risk of all sinful activities, without knowledge that such activities will keep him perpetually bound by the shackles of material bondage. Due to this polluted mentality and due to material sins, the aggregate combination of living entities appeared to be bluish. Such an impetus of activity for fruitive result is made possible by the dictation of the external energy of the Lord, Kala. Maybe that's where that comes from. You work until you're blue in the face. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. I got to read that again, I'm sorry. Don't mind. The subtle subject matter of creation on which the Lord's attention was fixed was agitated by the material mode of passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. Piercing through this sum total form of the fruitive activity of the living entities took the shape of the bud of a lotus flower generated from the personality of Viṣṇu, and by his supreme will it illuminated everything like the sun and dried up the vast waters of devastation. Into that universal lotus flower Lord Viṣṇu personally entered as the Supersoul, and when it was thus impregnated with all the modes of material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call the Self-Born, was generated. This lotus flower is the universal Virat form, or the gigantic form of the Lord in the material world. It becomes amalgamated in the personality of Godhead Viṣṇu in his abdomen at the time of dissolution, and it becomes manifest at the time of creation. This is due to Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, who enters into each of the universes. In this form is the sum total of all the fruitive activities of the living entities conditioned by material nature. And the first of them, namely Brahmā, or the controller of the universe, is generated from this lotus flower. This firstborn living being, unlike all the others, has no material father, and thus he is called self-born or Swayambhu. He goes to sleep with Narayan at the time of devastation. And when there is another creation, he is born in this way. From this description, we have the conception of three: the gross Virat form, the subtle Hiranyagarbha, and the material creative force, Brahmā. Brahmā, born out of the lotus flower, could not see the world, although he was situated in the world. He therefore circumambulated all of space, and while moving his eyes in all directions, he achieved 4 heads in terms of the 4 directions. Lord Brahmā, situated in that lotus, could not perfectly understand the creation, the lotus, or himself. At the end of the millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and the lotus in great circular waves. Lord Brahmā was perplexed about his creation, the lotus and the world, even though he tried to understand them for 1 millennium, which is beyond calculation in the solar years of human beings. No one, therefore, can know the mystery of the creation and cosmic manifestation simply by mental speculation. The human being is so limited in his capacity that without the help of the Supreme, he can hardly understand the mystery of the will of the Lord in terms of creation, continuance, and destruction. Lord Brahmā, in his ignorance, contemplated, "Who am I that am situated on the top of this lotus? Wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downwards, and that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water." The subject matter of the speculations of Brahma in the beginning regarding the creation of the cosmic manifestation is still a subject matter for mental speculators. The most intelligent man is he who tries to find the cause of his personal existence and that of the whole cosmic creation, and thus tries to find the ultimate cause. If his attempt is properly executed with penances and perseverance, it is sure to be crowned with success. Lord Brahmā, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus. Prahlad verse. Lord Brahmā, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus. But in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Viṣṇu, he could not trace out the root. By dint of one's personal endeavor, one may go nearer to the Lord, but without the Lord's mercy, one cannot reach the ultimate point. Such understanding of the Lord is possible only by devotional service, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18:55. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyash chasmi tattvataha. Tasyaiva vipuridam nijakala shakti kalina chodita zananuvataina sanchodita prakritit karmana atmagud ambasyananta shayanad viramat samadher nabera bhut swakanika vatavam mahabjam. Read it out loud. Yeah. Here, I'll do it. We're reading a parallel verse from Prahlāda. The cosmic manifestation in the material world is also your body. This total... No, that's not it. It's the one where he dives in the water.
Maybe next.
Kalina Tivra. Kalina Tivra. Tivra.
It's the next one.
Ha.
Bonus material.
Tat sambhava kaviratonya the pashamanas tam bijamatmani tatam sabahira vachintya na vindad abda shatam apsuni majamano jaten kore katamaho palabeta bija. From that great lotus flower, says Prahlāda, Brahmā was generated. But Brahmā certainly could see nothing but the lotus. Therefore, thinking you to be outside, Lord Brahmā dove into the water and attempted to find the source of the lotus for 100 years. He could find no trace of you, however, for when the original seed fructifies, the original seed cannot be seen. He goes on from there, he's describing the same pastime from the Bhagavatam. It's far out.
Incredible.
Prahlāda. Okay. Where am I? 20? O Vidura, while searching in that way about his existence, Brahmā reached his ultimate time, which is the eternal wheel in the hand of Viṣṇu, and which generates fear in the mind of the living entity, like the fear of death. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling all objectives, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. Samadhi involves concentrating the mind upon the supreme cause of all, even if one is unaware of whether his actual nature is personal, impersonal, or localized. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is certainly a form of devotional service. To cease from personal sense endeavors and to concentrate on the Supreme Cause is a sign of self-surrender. And when self-surrender is present, that is a sure sign of devotional service. Each and every living entity needs to engage in devotional service to the Lord if he wishes to understand the ultimate cause of his existence. At the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result, he could see in his heart the Supreme within himself, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. The Supreme Lord can be experienced only through the process of devotional service and not by one's personal endeavor in mental speculation. The age of Brahmā is calculated in terms of divya years, which are distinct from the solar years of human beings. The divya years are calculated in Bhagavad Gita 8:17, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam, Arhad Yad Brahmano Vidhu. Brahma's one day is equal to 1,000 times the aggregate of the 4 yugas, calculated to be 4,300,000 years. On that basis, Brahmā meditated for 100 years before he could understand the supreme cause of all causes. And then he wrote the Brahma Samhita, which is approved and recognized by Lord Chaitanya, and in which he sings, Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. One has to wait for the mercy of the Lord before one can either render service unto him or know him as he is. Brahmā could see that on the water there was a gigantic lotus-like white bedstead, the body of Sheshanaga, on which the personality of Godhead was lying alone. The whole atmosphere was illuminated by the rays of the jewels bedecking the hood of Sheshanaga, and that illumination dissipated all the darkness of those regions. The luster of the transcendental body of the Lord mocked the beauty of the coral mountain. The coral mountain is very beautifully dressed by the evening sky, but the yellow dress of the Lord mocked its beauty. There is gold on the summit of the mountain, but the Lord's helmet, bedecked with jewels, mocked it. The mountains, waterfalls, herbs, etc., with a panorama of flowers, seem like garlands. But the Lord's gigantic body and his hands and legs, decorated with jewels, pearls, tulsi leaves, and flower garlands, mock the scene on the mountain. The panoramic beauty of nature, which strikes one with wonder, may be taken as a perverted reflection of the transcendental body of the Lord. Read that again. The panoramic beauty of nature, which strikes one with wonder, may be taken as a perverted reflection of the transcendental body of the Lord. One who is therefore attracted by the beauty of the Lord is no longer attracted by the beauty of material nature, although he does not minimize its beauty. In Bhagavad Gita 2:59, it is described that one who is attracted by Param, the Supreme, is no longer attracted by anything inferior. His transcendental body, unlimited in length and breadth, occupied the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. His body was self-illuminated by unparalleled dress and variegatedness, and was properly ornamented. Purport: the length and breadth of the transcendental body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can only be measured by his own measurement, because he is all-pervading throughout the complete cosmic manifestation. The beauty of material nature is due to his personal beauty, yet he is always magnificently dressed and ornamented to prove his transcendental variegatedness, which is so important in the advancement of spiritual knowledge. Who said, I'll read it again then. The beauty of material nature is due to his personal beauty, yet he is always magnificently dressed and ornamented to prove his transcendental variegatedness, which is so important in the advancement of spiritual knowledge.
I just think it's really interesting.
I feel a Mangalananda song coming on. Yes, Mahendra Prabhu?
What is so important?
You got to give him the mic.
What is so important in the advancement?
The variegatedness.
Variegatedness or his beauty?
Both.
Yeah. From the sentence, I'm just trying to infer the meaning.
Does Mangalananda have a song about the universal form? Yeah? How's it go?
Oh, Govinda within my heart.
That's the one?
Yeah.
Celestial herdman, lotus eyed one.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
O Govinda within my heart.
Hare Krishna.
Celestial herdsman, lotus eyed one.
Hare
Okay.
Krishna.
Go ahead. If you know it, sing it. If Favi was here, we could hear the whole thing. The length, okay, text number 26. The Lord showed his lotus feet by raising them. His lotus feet are the source of all awards achieved by devotional service, free from material contamination. Such awards are for those who worship him in pure devotion. The splendor of the transcendental rays from his moon-like toenails and fingernails appear like the petals of a flower. The Lord fulfills the desires of everyone just as one desires. Pure devotees are interested in achieving the transcendental service of the Lord, which is non-different from him. Therefore, the Lord is the only desire of the pure devotees, and devotional service is the only spotless process for achieving his favor. Srila Rupa Goswami says in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11 that pure devotional service is jnana karmanyavratam. Pure devotional service is without any tinge of speculative knowledge and fruit of activities. Such devotional service is able to award the pure devotee the highest result, namely direct association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. According to the Gopal Tapani Upanishad, the Lord showed one of the many thousands of petals of his lotus feet. It is said, Brahmano sav ayananta varatam me Dhyata stutha paradante so bhujyata gopavesho me harastat avir babhuva. After penetrating for millions of years, Lord Brahma could understand the transcendental form of the Lord as Sri Krishna in the dress of a cowherd boy. And thus he recorded his experience in the Brahma Samhita and the famous prayer, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. He also acknowledged the service of the devotees and vanquished their distress by his beautiful smile. The reflection of his face, decorated with earrings, was so pleasing because it dazzled with the rays from his lips and the beauty of his nose and eyebrows. Devotional service to the Lord is very much obliging to him. There are many transcendentalists in different fields of spiritual activities, but devotional service to the Lord is unique. Devotees do not ask anything from the Lord in exchange for their service. Even the most desirable liberation is refused by devotees, although offered by the Lord. Thus the Lord becomes a kind of debtor to the devotees, and he can only try to repay the devotees' service with his ever-enchanting smile. The devotees are ever satisfied by the smiling face of the Lord, and they become enlivened. And by seeing the devotees so enlivened, the Lord himself is further satisfied. So this is continuous transcendental competition between the Lord and his devotees by such reciprocation of service and acknowledgement. O my dear Vidura, the Lord's waist was covered with yellow cloth resembling the saffron dust of the kadamba flower, and it was encircled by a well-decorated belt. His chest was decorated with the Srivatsa, marking and a necklace of unlimited value. As a sandalwood tree is decorated with fragrant flowers and branches, the Lord's body was decorated with valuable jewels and pearls. He was the self-situated tree, the Lord of all others in the universe, and as a sandalwood tree is covered with many snakes, so the Lord's body was also covered by the hoods of Ananta. The word avyakta moolam is significant here. Generally, no one can see the roots of a tree. But as far as the Lord is concerned, he is the root of himself, because there is no other separate cause of his standing but he himself. In the Vedas it is said that the Lord is Swashrayashraya. What's that song? He is his own support, and there is no other support for him. Therefore, avyakta means the Supreme Lord himself and no one else. Like a great mountain, the Lord stands as the abode for all moving and non-moving living entities. He is the friend of the snakes, because Lord Ananta is his friend. Keep that in mind. As a mountain has thousands of golden peaks, so the Lord was seen with the thousands of golden helmeted hoods of Ananta and Naga. And as a mountain is sometimes filled with jewels, so also his transcendental body was fully decorated with valuable jewels. As a mountain is sometimes submerged in the ocean water, so the Lord is sometimes submerged in the water of devastation. Lord Brahmā, thus looking upon the Lord in the shape of a mountain, concluded that he was Hari, the personality of Godhead. He saw that the garland of flowers on his chest glorified him with Vedic wisdom in sweet songs and looked very beautiful. He was protected by the Sudarshan wheel for fighting, and even the sun, moon, air, fire, etc. could not have access to him. When Lord Brahma, the maker of the universal destination, thus saw the Lord, he simultaneously glanced over creation. Lord Brahma saw the lake and Lord Viṣṇu's navel and the lotus flower, as well as the devastating water, the drying air, and the sky. All became visible to him. Lord Brahma, thus being surcharged with the mode of passion, became inclined to create, and after seeing the 5 causes of creation, indicated by the personality of Godhead, he began to offer his respectful prayers on the path of the creative mentality. Even if one is in the mode of passion to create something in the world, he has to take shelter of the Supreme for the necessary energy. That is the path of the successful termination of any attempt. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Manifestation of Brahmā from Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. Bravo. Sadhu, sadhu. And now we'll take a few reflections or questions. Oh, yes.
I have a question.
What? Did we win something? Yes?
Yeah.
Song.
I have to turn the volume up.
Lord, the sun's effulgence hide your face. Your blissful form lies far beyond my eyes. And now your wonders call my heart's embrace. As dawn displays your beauty in the skies. The rainbow shows the colors of your dress. Movements of the moon reflect your mind. Your smiling is the cause of happiness. Love exists because you are so kind. Oh, Govinda, within my heart, celestial earthman, lotus had one. Your precious gift of love impart. You stand behind the sun. You're the in my heart. Rolling rivers flow forth from your veins. Clouds that fill the sky come from your hair. The seeds of life are watered by your rains. From your breathing blows the mighty air. My Lord, you are the source of all I see. Your movements are the passing days of time. You are the resting place of all that be. Love exists because you are so kind. Oh, Govinda, within my heart, celestial earthman, lotus had one. Your precious gift of love impart. Oh, you stand behind the sun. You're the one in my heart. In my heart.
Thanks, Nirkula.
It's a so beautiful section of the description of the beauty of the Lord. and how devotees do not expect anything in return for their service, which is such an unusual thing in this world. Why you do this? There's no reason. I mean, they expect to see the smile of the Lord, and that's enough, and the Lord gets more pleased, and that exchange. But this sentence, I just wanted to ask, one has to wait for the mercy of the Lord before one can either render service unto Him or know Him as He is. What means to wait for the mercy?
It's just
before?
like before we speak, we offer prayers expectantly or hopefully that Krishna will empower our speech. Oftentimes devotees say, like Tara gave an excellent class the other day, and he said, I pray that I offer my respects to all the devotees here, and then I pray that I can say something useful. It's just in that vein that the devotee never thinks that he's independent, she's independent of doing any kind of service, and thinks, Krishna, if you so desire, please let me do this. Please empower me to make this garland or whatever it may be. Right? Yes?
Hare Krishna. This is maybe a little bit of a strange question, but anyways, it popped into my mind, so I'll just go with it. Because we're hearing these beautiful descriptions of the Lord, and Prabhupada's talking about how the highest result of devotional service is the direct association of the Lord, the direct service of the Lord, and Krishna is all attractive. So it's natural hearing these descriptions that we're going to be attracted to the Lord and want to associate with the Lord, want to serve the Lord. But then, you read some books and devotees say, no, it's not about serving Krishna. We shouldn't desire to serve Krishna. It's all about Radha Dasyam. That we should aspire to be servants of Radharani, and we shouldn't desire to directly serve Krishna. That's like not what it is. So, yeah, Prabhupada, he's like, serve Krishna, desire to Krishna's association.
Well, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Ladini Shakti Rasmat Ekatmana Apipu Vipura Deha Benam Gatal. Radha and Krishna are one, but they divide themselves eternally. And that sentiment of we only worship Radharani is something that some very advanced devotees have expressed previously. For instance, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it's not necessary to imitate that or to then try to, not necessary to imitate that sort of understanding. It's similar in, we talked the other day about how in Los Angeles, when the Chaitanya Charitamrita came out, some devotees, after reading the Antya Lila and certain parts of the Madhya Lila, then decided to only read those sections to the exclusion of Bhagavad Gita and other lower conceptions. And Prabhupada disbanded the group that had labeled themselves the Gopi Bhava Club. At that time, he told them that their attempt was artificial. He also said, we do not boycott Srimati Radharani. So everything should be entered into in a mature way, not an artificial way, because it doesn't help. And the devotees appreciates, as Prabhupada said earlier, every aspect of Krishna, even seeing nature. When Prabhupada saw the Pacific Ocean in San Francisco, he said, "Oh, glories to the Pacific Ocean." And so a pure devotee, although he or she may have a predisposition to a certain way of worship, spray it all over the place and try to enforce it for the good of others or to prove that they're more advanced than others. That's my spontaneous comment on that idea. We don't boycott Srimati Radharani, but also we don't need to artificially do that. That meaning distinguish one from the other. Is that all right?
Yeah. Just because, Shiva Ram Swami's books are out there, and of course the Acharyas talk all about this, and that's why Shiva Ram Swami was kind of like, well, I'm just going to say this because it's said in so many other places, but kind of like can give one the impression that it's almost wrong to want to serve Krishna.
Well, I don't know how Srimati Radharani would feel about that. That it's also in a similar vein of, and this related to the idea of the Gopi Vaba Club, that we'll only talk about Madhurya Ras. But how would Madhurya Ras work if there were no flowers or trees? They set the stage for that, and there's a concert of all of them together. What's more, in the Bhagavatamrita, when Narada is looking for the devotee that has the most mercy, each one of the devotees defers to another, and there's an upward trajectory to Vrindavan. When he gets to the gopis, they say, us? Who are we? So, unless one's devotional practice, says Narada in the Bhagavatamrita, is infused with dainya or utter humility, then it isn't real. He says that prema and dainya are practically synonymous. So when there's this sense of raising the flag and ours is better than yours because we're exclusively worshiping in Madhurya Ras or this or that, there is such a feeling in the spiritual world amongst those in different groups. But for those who are on the path of sadhana, to artificially try to jump into that mood, is not recommended. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur especially, and he wrote those verses for when they moved from, they meaning the Gaudiya Math, moved from Old Danga Junction Road to the Bhag Bazaar. When they got the new temple, they put the deities on chariots, and he had written the verses which had the meaning of how we keep the topics of Srimati Radharani, Madhurya Ras way above our heads. We're down here, we worship. And many of the disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta used to sing that regularly or have it emblazoned on the walls of their temples to remember that kind of mood. Yes, Mahendra Prabhu?
I just wanted to add that we have to see the examples of the Goswamis, because that's what Rupa Goswami says, that in our external sadhana practice we have to follow, and that's hearing and chanting, etc. So although we sing that Shrat Goswami Ashtaka and Gopi Bhavar Samrita Bilahari, they are completely absorbed in the mood of servants of Srimati Radharani. What do they do out in their sadhana practice, in their devotional service? They worship Krishna. They established deities of Krishna, and in fact the history is that there was no Radharani installed in the original temples. It came later. So one can say, well, isn't that contradiction? They're worshipping Krishna, but there's no Radharani, but they're in the mood of servants of Radharani. So that distinction is made, that in the stage of Raganuga, the spontaneous feeling of if one has that particular mood is done internally, but the external worship is always for Krishna. Actually, as you mentioned, what Srimati Radharani is pleased by is the mood of pleasing Krishna and serving Krishna. So sometimes when we see devotees externally singing for a long time, Radhe Radhe, for example, and Prabhupada never did it, and then it's like it seems like that's for pleasing Radharani, but if we think what she's pleased, she's not pleased by hearing her name. She wants to hear Krishna's name and to see how we serve Krishna. But we, as you say, in utter humility as followers, million times at a distance from her servants.
No, Prabhupada was careful about these exuberant, I could say over-exuberant expressions before devotees were ready. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu similarly, when Jagadananda finally got permission to come to Vrindavan, he told him, don't mix with the locals. You won't understand their mode of service. He's one of the eternal associates of Lord Chaitanya, and he said, don't get into it with them. And Prabhupada similarly, once I was texting a bunch of people because I was flying off, and I texted to Malati Jai Radhe, and she wrote back, said, no, Prabhupada, he said, they say Jai Radhe Radhe or Jai Radhe, and we say Hare Krishna. So it's sort of that Prabhupada very soberly would have devotees wait their turn. Don't jump in and demonstratively don't find a niche and then demonstratively present yourself as being more exalted than others. That lacks the requisite dainya. Now we got the cow break. We talk to the cows. They're pretty simple. They just like bananas. So we'll be back here at 25 after for the finale of today's reading. We're starting up. I know you'll want to come back for this. Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Oh yeah. It's too nice.
What was the name of that song?
I don't know, but
You know?
I don't know the name of it.
Okay.
But when that album came out, Prabhupada let us listen to it in the temple. He liked it. I was in Dallas at the time, and the word came down that Prabhupada said we could play it, everyone could listen to it. We're like, really? We can listen to this? Everyone's looking around like, sure he said that? Seems so radical. It's Mangalananda. He's a devotee. Prabhupada disciple.
Change of Heart.
What?
Change of Heart.
He wrote a few albums in there. Havi Prabhu, who's he's a world-class consummate musician, has won 2 Grammys, and he said we should have a ISKCON Grammys, and he wanted to have, Mangalananda be the first to do that, to receive, because of his musical contributions. I mean, his lyrics are fantastic. It's quite amazing. Om Tat Sat.